Okay, so we're at the third step of where to put an office. So remember, the first step is has to do with human nature, where you're emotionally connected, either with people or geographic where you were raised from. So you're talking about in a broad general area. So that puts us in the highest probability location. Then from there, we'll pick like 3 to 5 cities in that area, and we'll reverse engineer and go, okay, which of these cities have the highest, the most demographic, psychographics, geographics, and psychographic barriers that go to chiropractors? And that's typical middle, lower class, blue collar people, people that use their body for a living, for survival and shelter. That's who goes to chiropractors, not accountants and CPAs and lawyers. That's like, because they don't use their bodies. And I go into great detail in a separate video how that works. Okay, so we'll do the studies of each of those cities. And then I'll go, okay, because so we're already in the area you want to be. And you can live anywhere in this area. You can go to your white collar area and buy a home and live and all that. And then you just drive over to your office. Like me, I live I live 19 miles away from my office. I lived in the East End, which is middle upper class white collar. And I practiced in the South End, which was real. And actually it wasn't just South End, it was bedroom community South End. But it was an interstate to get to it. So it only took me like 21 minutes to get to work. And I was right in the middle of all the blue collar area where I would not want to live. I'm middle upper class, white collar, educated, 3 degrees, doctorate degree. Well, that's not where I'd want to live, but that's where my market's at. So I practice where my market's at, and then I drive home to where I wanted to live culturally, socioeconomically. So right next to me was a medical doctor, and across the street from was a dentist. Neither one of them go to chiropractors or had ever been to a chiropractor. Okay, so that's how we go and find. Now, once we're in the city, we go, okay, now we got the city. Now we go through the main streets. We go, okay, let's go into the main streets. We'll go through the main streets and then secondary streets, like secondary intersections. That's where we want to put an office, because we're looking for easy visibility, easy in and out, easy visibility. That's what we're looking for. Okay. And these can vary whether you're in a rural area, a suburb area, or an inner city, but that's generally what we're looking for. And there's definitely some variations, whether it's inner city, suburb, or rural. Okay, and I'll cover each of those individually also. But right now we're kind of talking just general. So that's what we'll do. We'll go into that city, and then we're going to look for we're going to look for the obvious, who has places for rent, okay? But you'll find most of the space where there's not a for rent sign. In other words, like 52% of the spaces we found did not have a for rent sign. So what we did is we drive down to town. We at least drive 3 times. The first time you'll only see like the big picture stuff. The more times you drive down the road, you won't pay attention as to the big picture, and you'll start seeing the little stuff, things you didn't see the first time you went through the road. And that's what I always told my clients. I said, drive up and down there at least 3 times minimum, try to do 5, 6, 7, 8. The more you go down, you'll start seeing space that you never saw the first or second time you drove down that road. It's kind of amazing how that happens. So, and then I go, okay, we already know what we want. We want easy accessibility. We want on the right side of the road at 5:00 p.m. That's when the majority of the traffic is. If it's going to be on the left side, we want a stoplight for safety to turn. So, and then we'd like easy in and out, good visibility, and parking. So we're going to pay attention to, these are some of the major factors. And then we would look for rent signs. And then if we saw that type of location, even though it did not have a for rent sign, we would stop and knock on the door. We'd go in. We'd ask to see the manager or the owner. We'd ask the person, say, is the owner available? And then we'd ask the owner, do you plan on moving anytime soon? Or do you know of anybody locally that is? I can't tell you how many places we've got like that. And sometimes they'll go, well, yeah, I'm moving, the end of the month. My lease is up. I'm moving over there or whatever, and there was no for rent sign on the window. So, in other words, it takes a lot of pounding the pavement. You don't just go with the signs for rent. If you go with those, you'll typically get the worst deals. And you'll typically be in not as good a part of town. Because remember, wherever you see more signs for rent, that's not as good a part of town. That's why there's more signs for rent. So it should typically be tough to find space, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. In other words, there's high demand, which means it's going to generally be pretty good. Okay, I've seen that happen a lot. Doctors go across the railroad tracks, across the psychographic barrier to the other side of town because it was cheap. Well, there's a reason it was cheap. It's on the other side of the tracks, and people don't go over there because it's a psychographic barrier, where it would be difficult to find space for rent over here, and there may not even have been a sign for rent. So, that's when you literally park your car and you just walk down every business and you knock on the door and say, hey, is the owner there? And now we always ask for the owner, because the employee is the last person to know. Owner's not going to tell the employee, hey, I'm going to shut the business down or I'm going to move it. The employee won't even know. So we're not going to ask the employee. A lot of times the manager won't know. So we're going to ask for the owner. Hey, do you have the owner? I'd like to talk to the owner. Ask him a few questions about the area and the space. And then get the name and number from the manager and call the owner and say, hey, I'm looking for space. Do you plan on moving anytime soon? If not, then say, do you know of anybody? Because a lot of times the owners know each other. They talk. They know who's doing what or who's going to move or, stuff like that. So, and that's, by the way, that's how I found my space. I found my first office. I looked, I'm like, oh, that's a great space. Easy in, easy out. And it happened to be a medical doctor and a dentist. It was like a duplex. I'm like, man, that's a great location, right off the main road, easy in, easy out, good visibility. I went over there, knocked on, went inside and said, hey, I'm a chiropractor looking for space. Is the dentist here? You go, yeah. Said, he comes over. I said, I'd like to just introduce myself. I said, I'm looking for space. Do you know of any space available? Or, do you plan on moving anytime soon? He goes, yeah, we're moving next month. That literally happened. They go, yeah, we're moving next month. We're renting here. We built our own building 2 blocks down the road there. I'm like, whoa. I got the owner on the phone. I agreed to the lease on the phone that day. There was no for rent sign, see? So typically the more work you got to do to find it, typically it's going to be a better location. You got all kinds of for rent signs, chances are it's not going to be a very good location. So to kind of just keep that in mind. But that's how we'll start narrowing it down after we found the generic area through the emotional connection. Then we want to find, what area, north, south, east, or west, based on demographics, psychographics, geographic, and utilization, who actually uses chiropractic statistically. Because I'm going to put my office where they are. And I used to joke, I used to tell my clients, I said, take your wife and go through that area. If she loves it, get out of there. Because most women like nice stuff. They like the middle upper class white collar stuff. I said, if she likes it, get out of there. If she goes, oh man, I wouldn't want to be here, park the car and look for space. And then you can always drive back to the white collar area and live. But that's where you're going to find the highest probability, the highest density of people that are naturally looking for chiropractic. It just makes things that much easier when you put yourself, let's face it, you go to this area over here, and out of 10,000 people, let's say 7,000 are middle collar, middle lower class, blue collar, that have a higher probability of utilizing chiropractic because they need their spine, their back, and their bodies. Versus this area over here, it's white collar, 10,000, and they only have maybe 1,000 people that's blue collar, and the rest of them are white collar. They don't really use their bodies for survival or security. Well, this is going to be nicer, but it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to get business out of this than this over here. You're going to have to be way better over here than over here. That's called market forces. That's what it's called. Okay, if you have any questions about that, so that's some of the ways that we actually find rent. Most of it, like I told you, 52% of the practices we opened did not have a for rent sign on. We looked for what we wanted. Easy in, easy out, good access, good visibility, good possible signage, that kind of stuff. Right side of the road, preferably if it was on the left. It was a red light, so it's safe to cross over at the 5 o'clock hour. And by the way, you'll find more. That's why you'll find less buildings on the left side of the road at 5 p.m. going home. And that's why it'll be cheaper over there. That's why you'll see more buildings on the right side at 5 p.m. going home, and it'll be more expensive. That's why. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm Dr. Paul again. I've opened 77 offices in 20 states. If you have any questions about how to, get a practice up and going, that's what we do. We teach chiropractors how to start a practice, how to build a practice, how to hire, train associate doctors. That's exactly what we do. So you can check us out at, you can go to Secrets of Chiropractic Success, and there's all kinds of information there, but you're going to want to join the, we have a lot of free, by the way, we do have a lot of free information on how to start a practice, and you're going to want to just join that membership and just access all that free information in there. And then if you have any questions, give me a call. I'll be glad to answer them. Be glad to answer them for you.